Hello. I've come across a disturbing report. Disturbing, but unfortunately, in the current climate, not overly surprising. This is from the BBC. I'm going to read it out because it's not overly long. I try to read out shorter reports on the grounds that it's important to put the details as they are reported, rather than relying on just memory on these cases. An Australian bride to be has been shot by the US police after a 911 call. This is a report from the BBC. An Australian woman has been killed by a US police officer responding to a 911 call in Minneapolis. The Minnesota Department of Public Safety said police responded to a call of possible assault when at one point an officer fired their weapon, fatally striking a woman. The BCA is investigating the Saturday incident but said the officer's body cameras were not turned on at the time. I'm going to come back to that. I think that's very important. The victim has been identified by Australian officials as Justine Damont. According to Australian media, the 40-year-old woman was living in Minneapolis with her fiance. The woman called 911 to report a noise near her home when the incident occurred, reports said. A man claiming to be Miss Damon's son, also said in a Facebook video that she was the one who alerted authorities. She thought something bad was happening, and the next thing I know, they take my best friend's life, the man named Zach said. Minneapolis Mayor Betsy Hodges said in a statement she was heartsick and deeply disturbed by what occurred last night. Over the past few years, the US has seen a series of civilian killings at the hands of police that have caused widespread concern and criticism, which is an understatement. I think it's caused a great deal of anger. Miss Damani Justine Ruzic taught meditation classes at Lake Harriet Spiritual Community. She used the surname of the man she was expected to marry in August, Don Damond, according to the Minneapolis Star Tribune. She is believed to have been living in the US for at least the last 3 years. About 200 neighbors, family members, and residents shocked by the shooting gathered for a vigil on Sunday night where she died. I mean, anybody here, they're shocked, said Miss Damond's student Corey Burkholtz, as he told CBS News. He described Miss Damond as a very conscious, loving person, and you wouldn't associate that with a gunshot in an alley. I don't know anything about the law or police work to that extent, but to me it seems really stupid. You have a camera, aren't you supposed to use them? Mr. Burkholtz added. Mayor Hodges echoed his sentiment, saying at a news conference, I share the same questions other people have about why we don't have body camera footage of it, and I hope to get answers in the coming days. The two officers involved in the shooting are on paid administrative leave. The Australian Department of Foreign Affairs released a statement on Monday on behalf of Mrs. Damon's family. This is a very difficult time for our family, the statement said. We are trying to come to terms with this tragedy and to understand why this has happened. Um, okay, I'm going to come back to this issue about the body camera. To me, that is very, very important. The only reason an officer is not going to be using their body camera is because they have something to hide. I don't accept, oh, he just forgot. If the police and law enforcement took this seriously, they would be drilling that in to recruits. They would be drilling that into their personnel. You have to wear this at all times. It's for their sake as much as anyone else's, because if they're accused of something, if they are innocent, they can then show the body footage. So that in itself should absolutely warrant this officer being punished. The fact that he failed to have his body cam on. Now, judging by the profile of this lady, she does not sound like a violent thug. She does not sound like someone who would have given this officer any cause to defend himself. Um, if more information does transpire, this case is automatically flawed from the lack of that body cam footage. And I think it is a complete disgrace. And this is something else that angers me, the fact that the officers involved, plural, presumably one officer pulled the gun and two attended the scene. I think that's protocol that they always arrive in twos. Um, Clearly, something doesn't add up here. And I think what infuriates people is they're putting paid administrative leave. Now, anybody else accused of shooting an unarmed person, there's no indication this woman had a gun. Anyone else accused of shooting an unarmed person, killing them, would be arrested on suspicion of murder. Why do the cops get away with it? Why is there double standards? I think that is what absolutely infuriates people. And I would not be surprised if we see yet another case which is completely, the office is completely exonerated. People say there's always apologists for these things. There's always people who come out and say, oh, she wasn't complying. Never mind the fact she thought she was doing the right thing. She heard a disturbance. She called law enforcement. She called them. What sort of situation do we have when citizens think that they're doing the right thing and they end up dead? It's disgusting. And this deeply damages the image of American cops. The more I see of these things, the more I think, I'm sorry, but the US really does at times look like a police state. I think the problem is you have paramilitarized police. This is a country awash with guns, which I think is another part of the problem. Yes, they do go up against genuinely dangerous criminals, and I'm not undermining that. But clearly, there are too many trigger happy cops involved on the field that shoot before they think. There's nothing in this report that indicates a woman was posing a threat. Nothing. And even if information does transpire at a later time, this case is already flawed by the lack of body cam footage. You know, Frankly, I would not put it past the police to cover themselves up and try and rig this like the woman done something to deserve it. I would not put it past them. I don't trust them, quite frankly. I do not trust American law enforcement not to do that. I have defended the police at times when I think they've been unfairly criticised, but there are too many examples of this sort of thing happening. Too many. And I know they face a dangerous job. There was a young officer killed in New York City recently. That is also tragic. But there is a fundamental difference. If you kill a police officer, that's either a mandatory life sentence or mandatory death penalty. If a police officer kills a civilian, they're put on death duty. How is that fair? So if the Minnesota Police Department or whichever the local jurisdiction is here, the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, the irony of that name, they need to answer questions, and there must be public pressure on them. Peaceful public pressure. Violent protest is not the answer. Burning cars, etc., is not the answer. But there should be pressure, otherwise, this will be swept under the carpet. And this is disgusting. I want to know why this officer wasn't wearing his body cam. It should be absolutely mandatory. That in itself, paid administrative leave. Why paid? Why paid? At the very least, this guy was guilty of professional misconduct. At the very least, by not wearing his body cam. And it makes me so angry. I mean, to be quite honest, there are many things I like a lot about the United States. It's a great country, and there are many things I'm fond of concerning the US. But frankly, the power that the police have over there is scary. They basically have the power of God. So they can do anything they want and seemingly get away with it. Once in a blue moon, you might see justice. You might see an officer, if there's enough public pressure, actually face justice. But this is happening too much. And, my heart goes out to this woman's family. My heart goes out to her fiance. I can't imagine what he's going through at this time. But they have every right to demand answers to this. And I think it would be absolutely abhorrent if they try to corrupt this case by trying to defame this woman and saying she somehow deserved it. I would not put it past them. But look at her profile. She's a meditation teacher, for goodness sake. Does that sound like someone who's going to be a violent thug? I don't think so. Also, this case indicates something else. Anyone is a potential victim of police violence. This was a white woman. So, there's clearly no racial component in this case. And that shows to me that every American citizen should be concerned about the behavior of their law enforcement. I'm not an anarchist. I'm not saying they're all the same or something like that, but there are too many officers that behave this way. And my message to any decent officers out there is find your conscience and condemn this. Well, why the hell was this guy not wearing his body cam? That is, I think, really telling. And to those who want to always find excuses, they have this mentality that if someone's wearing a uniform, they are always right. That is a regressive and stupid mentality. Police officers are just as guilty or just as capable of being corrupt as anyone else. And this mentality that is very prevalent in the States, they're wearing a uniform so it's okay. You know, there is definitely double standards. When an officer dies, there is huge official condemnation. There is really, it's a completely different attitude. What we're going to see here is silence from Trump. We're going to see silence from people who will be the first to condemn if an officer is shot, which I'm not condoning, but the double standard stinks. Why has these officers been put on administrative leave? Why? Why have they not been arrested on suspicion of murder? Unless someone is posing a direct, immediate, and clear threat, there's absolutely no reason for what happened. Now, as I say, more information may transpire, but whatever transpires, it doesn't condone the fact that this cop was concealing his video cam. He wasn't wearing his video cam. So, whatever transpires, that in itself has to be a mitigating factor. So, if they use some sort of smear on this woman to try and get this guy off the hook, that question must be pushed and pushed and pushed. The Minnesota Department of Public Safety need to feel the heat. They need to feel the heat in a peaceful way. They need to feel the heat to answer these questions. It's a bloody disgrace, and I'm. It depresses me reading about this sort of stuff because it definitely makes me think twice about visiting the US, even as a tourist. This is clearly a big American problem, and unfortunately, a lot of people still have their head buried in the sand that this is a real problem. So I'll just close by saying my thoughts really are with the family. I can't imagine the mental anguish, the confusion, and the pain that they're going through right now. And it would be a complete disgrace if this officer gets off the hook.